Welcome back to the MVM review of Treasure Island. This is from Matagot. It is a 2 to 5 player deduction game about one player taking on the role of Long John Silver, hiding his treasure on this island while all the other pirates are trying to discover it.
Yeah, you'd think a lot of these one versus manys are hidden movement, but like Jeremy said, Long John Silver is placing his treasure somewhere on this map, and it stays put.
Yeah.
But all the pirates, or all the treasure hunters rather, are moving around here trying to find it. It is a pure sandbox because you can put that treasure anywhere.
Yeah, speaking of sandbox, when you look at this map, there's no grids, there's no paths, there's no spots.
No hexes.
You are free to move basically anywhere you wish to move. Outside some guidelines, there's some red lines on the board that signify the boundaries of some of the areas on the outskirts, mainly the deep water areas, but also there's some mountain ranges that you can't move through. Other than that, you're free to move through other player spots. That treasure can be basically anywhere inside of that red area and not in the mountain areas. So he can literally hide that treasure anywhere.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen at the beginning of the game. They're going to hide that treasure, like Jeremy said, in any little tiny nook or cranny of this thing. You can put it right up in between, two mountains that are close to each other, or out to the very, very edge. Now, as you play, you might discover that those aren't necessarily the best ways to go. You might not want to be that obvious by hiding it in that way, but it's definitely free form.
There are 3 basic rules that you have to follow when you hide that treasure. It cannot be outside of the boundaries. It cannot be inside any of these mountain ranges. And it cannot be on any of these white lines or dotted spaces. That's because the game board is actually broken into 11 different districts. Those districts correlate to 11 cards that Captain Silver can actually pass out to the characters to tell them that the treasure is not in that specific district. So you can't hide it on the line because that would be 2 districts. All right, so each of the players is going to pick one of the pirates to play. These pirates are going to be represented by one of these miniatures. They're each going to start in a very specific location. Long John Silver is going to start off the board on this calendar board, and they're all going to have player screens with maps behind them. These maps are going to denote not only where Long John's hid the treasure, but also a note section for him to kind of write down, I've told David this clue, but I've told Ryan this clue, and so forth, because it's very important. Through the course of the game, you're going to be handing out clues to people. Some of the clues are known to everybody. Some of the clues are only known to specific pirates. So it's very important for that Captain Silver player to know which clues he's given to which people.
Yeah, and in fact, some of the clues could be lies or might not be lies. You don't know. As the players who aren't playing Long John Silver, you have to not only consider what information you're getting from him, but also taking a look around the table to see what the other players are doing. What they're doing really leads you to believe what their clues might be and hopefully narrow things down.
The game structure itself is very simple to follow. At the start of the game, you're going to take one of the players that's on these marks here, and you're simply going to move it to the first available space. Each of these calendar locations can only be occupied by one of the pirates, meaning that the next player to go is going to leap over that player and take this action, and so forth. So each player is going to get a set number of actions. When you look at these calendar spots, they're going to have different denotions or symbols on them. They're going to denote what happens for the Long John Silver player during that phase. Sometimes he may have an action. Sometimes it's just skipped over him completely. Anytime you see any of these hint cards, these refer to the hints that Captain Silver is giving out to each of the different people at the table. At the start of the game, he's going to have 3 of these starting hints. But as the game progresses, he's going to turn these in for some of the black spot hints, which are a little bit harder for the Long John Silver to try to pick from because they give a more narrow perspective of where that treasure could be. Anytime that comes up, he's going to pick one of these treasures, and he's simply going to lay it on the first spot of the board. As you notice, the very first clue that he gives out to everybody at the table is 100% true. But as the game progresses and he gets to more of these spots, he'll be laying these out, giving more clues to where the players are. But then he's going to take one of these tokens. These tokens are going to say, yes, that's 100% true. Or it could be one of these bluffing tokens that he gets at very specific portions in the game. He's going to take one of these tokens and lay it face down. It's the players or the pirates' decision to try to use one of their special actions to see if that is true or false, because those question marks can be a bluff. They could be 100% true, or they could be a 100% false clue that he gives it. gave to people.
Yeah, and that makes those particular clues very interesting, because in many cases you might want to just disregard the clue and try to put it out of your mind because you don't know whether it's true or false. Now, there are some other things you can look at on the map, and as Jeremy said, he's going to be laying those clues out throughout the game. What he's going to be trying to do is trying to avoid putting clues out there that synergize together, that gives away too much information when they're combined, because that can happen. So you're wanting to try to avoid that by putting clues out to keep everyone around the table guessing.
One of the things I forgot to mention at the very start of the game, as I spoke about these 11 different districts, Captain Silver is going to pick the district in which he hid the treasure. He's going to take that out of this stack. This stack is going to show all the districts with the places where it's not. He's going to take that one out, put it behind a screen, then he's going to give one of these to each of the different players participating. That's going to tell those players one of the 11 districts where the treasure is not. And again, it's extremely important for Silver to write that down on his sheet so he knows which clues he's given to which people. Once Silver's turn is done, and those are going to happen in very specific areas, then it's the player's turn whose marker is on that spot. And you're either going to get 1 or 2 actions depending upon what calendar space it is on. Then the pirate gets to take the actions.
Yeah, and any pirate can take a number of different actions, just some of them that you get to do, in fact, the basic ones. One is to move a distance of 3. And again, we said this is a free-form game. You see all these components here. Comes with this ruler, comes with a lot of dry erase markers. You're able to use this on the map and draw literal lines from where your current position is to where you want to move to. Now, when you do this, again, you can't move through those red lines, but that's really the only rule.
Yeah.
You can move in any other way you want to. So you're going to draw a line, put your character there, and if you've moved 3, you get to do a small search. You're going to use this small ring right here, draw a circle around the center of that, and then ask Long John Silver, is the treasure in there? You're going to get a yes or no. So you're going to start to find getting these little pockets all over the board where you know the treasure is not. And then you can even look at that information and kind of discern where things might be headed. Unless, of course, Long John Silver is a really good player.
Yeah, so you have 3 actions, 3 basic actions. One is the foot movement with 3 spaces and a small search. You can stay in your space and not move and do a large search. That's where you're going to take that large ring and put it around your character and then do the inside of the circle. The other option is to move 6 spaces. This is being on horseback. You're moving a great distance across the board. Now, there's also these special actions. Every single one of these players has variable player powers. They're going to come with their own little sideboard that tells you one of multiple different actions. Some of them have infinity actions, meaning that every time they do something, they get to do it a little bit better than the other characters. Some of them have checkmark boxes that you can only use once during the entire game. For instance, you have a character here that lets you use a verification, a full gallop, and then a compass. All of those do very specific things.
We mentioned earlier this large disc. I have a dog with me, so if I use this large search, I'm not drawing my circle around the inside, but the outside, so it gives me a little bit more information while I'm searching. Some of the variable powers are really, really interesting. Jeremy mentioned earlier that he's going to give out one of those cards at the beginning to each player. There's one character that gets multiple of those. So they're actually going to get a lot of information right from the beginning of the game. Of course, they don't have those variable powers or other variable powers used throughout.
The compass one is very, very interesting. This is going to force me to give that player one of these tokens here. These tokens are going to show 2 locations according to wherever the player is and according to the north, west, east, and south locations on the board. Draw 2 lines on his mini-map on where the location is not. So I could give him this one and say it's not northeast and it's not south of your location. So he's going to take this compass, look at where he is on the board, and on his mini-map he's going to draw those sections out so he knows I never need to search in those areas again. So again, this is very important for the silver player to know what compass things he's given to each player, because you may know it's not there, but Ryan may know that he has no idea that it's not there. So this is very important for the players to try to figure out what other players may know as well, and all kinds of different variable player powers. There's a couple other locations on this calendar that are important. One is Monday the 4th. This is when the player that lands on that spot is going to take silver and place it on one of these black towers that you see on the board. That's important because if the treasure is not found by the 17th day, silver is going to actually escape from his prison. And then his action for that turn when it comes back around to him is to take a horseback movement of 6 spaces. If he lands on his treasure, he wins the game. So if I'm the Long John Silver player, I escape, I take 6 movement, it could go around, 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 back to me, and I'm just trying to get there, but also trying to mislead them by going in weird directions so that I land on it perfectly.
Yeah, if you've gone all 17 days and that happens, it's kind of fun to watch that silver player run around the board kind of crazily, because you, like Jeremy said, you don't want to run straight to your treasure because we all have turns still. So we can actually run to where we think he's going and do a large search, do a small search, any of those actions we already talked about.
There's one more thing I want to talk about before we get into the actual review. If a player makes a search, either the small search or the large search, and they're wrong, I have to tell them 100% accuracy whether that is they found the treasure or not. There's 2 things that can happen if they don't find the treasure. One, I can simply say, David, you did not find the treasure. Or I could give him one of the many tokens that you see here. If I give him one of these tokens, I simply give it to him, and it's a free action that he can take on his turn. A lot of these things are saying, where you searched, it's west of that, or where you searched, it's east of that, or you can take a free action later on in the game. What that does for the silver player is that it opens up some of the hint cards with a treasure in the bottom left-hand corner. These are better hints to give the players because they're more forgiving than the other ones in the game. So you're going to be giving up some things to the players, but you're getting something in return. So that's basically it. If the players find the treasure, will they win, or that player wins? And if silver is able to escape by the 17th day and then find his own treasure, he wins. So let's talk about the review.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I love the sandbox nature of this game. All these hidden movement, this isn't really hidden movement, I would say more deduction game, have grids or they have locations. Being able to have a complete open sandbox to move where you want, to hide the treasure literally anywhere you want, and to know that you're giving these clues to players through the course of the game and having to remember which clues you gave to one player compared to the next player, it's really, really interesting. I find that to be really cool. Not to mention the mind game that goes into this. Like, there's mind games being played on both sides. There's the mind game that Silver is playing with the players. But also, there's a reverse mind game that the players know information that the other players don't know. So they may be doing things in locations where they know something's not available and then skipping, using like a full gallop to the other side. Especially as the game winds down, you can start doing those things against the other players to try to lock up the treasure for yourself.
Yeah, and it depends really on the players at the table, but you could actually really get into each other's heads to the point where you might even make a move right after you get a clue, your own private clue, to maybe even bluff the other players at the table. There's not a lot of time in this game to do that because time is precious and you really want to be making progress towards figuring things out. But if you think you have a sense and you have a clue and you have the opportunity to throw the other players off at the table, if you think they're paying attention that much, you could do something like that as well. One thing I will say off of Jeremy's pro of it being a sandbox, which I do conceptually love, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily a con, but the flip side of that sandbox being a positive is the fact that it does just completely open this up to the point where it becomes a lot more difficult to figure out where a location is, because it can literally be in every little nook and cranny. Like I said, that's awesome if you're Silver. It's so fun putting that somewhere and not, everyone else not knowing. But if you're the player looking for it and you search in a little area and it's left a tiny little space of an area unsearched and you think, it could be in that little area and now I'm going to have to move a little and search again. That can be a little frustrating on the player side.
Absolutely. This is kind of a positive and a negative before I get into the negatives on my side at least. I believe there's a high degree of skill hidden in this game for both sides. Trying to use these hint cards in the best way possible, making sure in my mind as a Silver player that I don't double down on the wrong kind of hints to the wrong players. You want to be very careful on how you give hints out. On the flip side, the negative side, I believe there's also a high degree of luck in this game. Like, you could do a search on the first turn and find the treasure, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess I found it. There was no deduction. I just randomly ran into it.
That would be strange, but it is entirely possible.
100% possible.
I mean, someone could just move off in a direction and think, because at the very beginning of the game, all the players are like, well, I don't know much, so I'm just going to go over here and search.
Yeah. If
you happen to search and find it's like, oh, okay. I guess the good news is you can quickly reset and start playing again. But yeah, there is a fair amount of luck on the front of finding it.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, it can be very difficult to locate it, especially you're trying a search here, okay, another one here, and you've got all these little circles around with all these little potential spaces that you didn't search, so that can be a negative. One other pro that I wanted to say before we get into any more cons, the components, which we didn't talk about much at the beginning of the review, are beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, this is a really cool thing on the table. Anyone lays this out, you're taking it out, it feels like some old toy kit that you'd get when you were a kid. It's got compasses. It's got this
caliper.
This right here, which you can actually stick on the board with this suction cup and draw things on the board, because some of those clues are for everyone. So if everyone at the table says, okay, let's mark that off, everyone can do something like that on the board. The board can be written on, your mini boards can be written on. It's got these cool components, and then best of all, Vincent Dutrait did the art.
Yeah.
We don't have these player shields out right now because we wanted you to see the whole presentation, but the art on those,
fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, here's some of them right here. I mean, you've got art for each of the characters. It's just beautiful stuff if you like Vincent Dutrait, for sure.
All right, negatives, get back into that. One of the things you had mentioned was you have to pay attention. I like that aspect of it. I can see that being extremely frustrating for the pirate players. Like, I have to know why you're moving in certain locations. I know information that you don't. For some people, I can see that being frustrating, where there's not perfect information at the table. Having only some people know some of the information, yes, there's hints that everyone knows, but even those hints are face down. You don't know if those are true or not. So you have to spend some time and actions to be able to use your verifications, to look at the front sides of those and say, okay, they're true. But you don't know the information that Silver is given to other players. So I can see that being cool for some players, like myself. I love reading what other people are doing and saying, okay, I think he's moving here because he has a good idea it's here. But for some people, they just want perfect information in these type of games.
Right.
And that doesn't give that to you all the time.
Well, and I think the lack of the structure, the fact that it is freeform and sandbox, makes it so the information you get, you're probably getting as much information as you would in another game that has hexes or grids of some kind. But the information you get is all over the place. You know, I might be able to, like we said, rule out an area of this and this from my character, and then maybe these pockets. So the information that you're ruling out is scattered all over the place, which in a way you're getting a lot of information, but you're also, the information you don't have is still all over the place. So you still feel like you might have to journey all over this map in order to find it. There's no sort of mechanism for saying, okay, it's definitely not on this half of the map anymore, unless you've gotten to the point where he's given you a clue or a couple clues to lead you in that direction.
The last negative I'll mention is the tools. We already mentioned how they're cool. They're also, in my opinion, a little bit too small at times. These mini maps are really hard to see. The color coding on the board is beautiful. This side is full color. The other side's kind of got a gray, opaque look to it, which makes it a little bit easier. But for people like me that are colorblind, there's a lot of color going on here. And some of these markers, like the blue and the light green and the orange, they're very hard to see when you're drawing lines on this board. You need really good overhead light in order to see them. The other thing I'll say is that the caliper, at least ours, this may be wrong, but it's not very...
Ours was kind of loose.
So it makes it very hard to draw a perfect circle.
And it should be noted that this copy is not a production copy that came shrink wrapped. So this copy had been played a number of times before. So my guess is this may have
put together at the factory, probably
exactly something like that, and a little overused. One other thing I will say is, like what Jeremy just said, the information, once you're getting more and more information on this board, on your player board, it's just hard to see.
Yeah.
Like, not only the colors, but some of these lines are extraordinarily small, so it's easy to overlook. One thing you might have recognized early in the game, by the end of the game, you might have forgotten, oh, that's right, you're outside of this little tiny yellow dashed line. I completely forgot about that because it's not glaring at you right in the face.
Right. Anyway, having said all that, I really enjoyed the game. I loved playing it. I love these hidden movement, deduction style games, and I think this is completely different. I think it's going to throw some people off by the fact that it is freeform, it is sandbox, it is something completely unique, and it puts players really in a very cool thematic atmosphere that most games do not.
And it's a lot shorter than most of those games.
True, 45 minutes to play.
This game plays a lot more quickly than those others. 2
to 5 players, ages 10 and up. This is Treasure Island from Matagot Games. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, everything else that we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.